So this is the full moon in Gemini in Punar Vasu Nakshatra. We see the new moon in Gemini is happening here on January 9th at about 12:51 p.m. Pacific time. Moon in Punar Vasu Nakshatra, which is ruled by Jupiter. Now this full moon is the halfway point in the Sagittarius cycle, which began a couple weeks ago with that new moon in Sagittarius, which was aspected by Jupiter and Saturn. Very auspicious new moon we had in Sagittarius in Mula Nakshatra. So, as you remember, the new moon in Sagittarius is the moment where body and mind, body and soul, or mind and soul come together around this sense of meaning and hope and purpose. Very important cycle of Sagittarius, which is, it's really about higher purpose, a sense of meaning, and things that are beyond just the fear and darkness of the world and our imagined fears. Sagittarius comes after Scorpio because Scorpio is where we have to face those imagined fears. So Sagittarius is like, okay, it's more than just all of my emotional longings and fears and things I can't control and the things I love that could get taken away from me, which is like my connection to the life force itself. And if I can't control that, and if I can't keep even my loved ones, and it's all going to get taken away, then what's the point? This is like the desperation of Scorpio, where we become aware of that. And it's not just Scorpios. Everyone has Scorpio somewhere in their chart. It's that section of the zodiac. So after that, we're like, oh, I must go inward, concentrate my feelings in my heart on what's deep and internal and eternal, and stabilize the emotions. Scorpio is about emotional stability. It can be about emotional control and emotional fanaticism and obsession when it's outward, when it's focused on the external. When it's reflected internally, it's about emotional strength. And no one has the emotional strength and resiliency of a person with a lot of planets in Scorpio who has done the work, because it's literally about stabilizing the emotions. Emotional power. So after that, we become filled with hope. That's Sagittarius. There is a big meaning and purpose and hope. And it can be religious. It's some form of belief. Even everybody says I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. They're usually religious because religion is about the belief. Spirituality is about practices. All the planets are spiritual. All the energies are spiritual because they're about practice. Each planet has its own way of being spiritual. But religion, faith, hope, optimism, the sense of meaning, and the thing that gets us through when life kicks us down is related to Jupiter, and especially Sagittarius, which is about the expression of that and extending it into the world. Like, this is what I believe in, and this gives me hope, and this active thing. So the opposite point of that is Gemini, which is where we look at those beliefs, we look at those teachers, we assess those teachings, and we try to understand it rationally. Because our teachings have to make sense to us. Otherwise, they just become dogmas. This is how these signs work in tandem with each other. One is not better than the other. One is not, this is the good one, this is the bad one. This is, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so that's spiritual and religious, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so it's all just stimulated and playful and goofy. All of the signs are divine energies. They all have a very high divine purpose. And so the divine purpose of Gemini is discrimination, where we're not just prone to blind faith and to just believe in something because it even because it gives us hope and gives us and allows us to live our life better. The reason people have a belief system and it becomes a blind belief system is because it's easy. It's easier to live a life when you have belief, when you have hope and faith in something. The sort of culmination of a kind of negative Sagittarius energy reminds me of like the bumper sticker I used to see. I don't know if I've seen it very often lately, but it's, God said it, I believe it, and that settles it. It's like, okay, I got it. Of course, the fact that God said it was written in the book, that, God wrote the Bible, so I believe the Bible. It's like, okay, it's kind of this self-contained, system of belief that's not based on any kind of inquiry. So Gemini is where we test those theories, those teachings, and they have to make sense to us intellectually. And you can tell if something makes sense to someone intellectually if they can explain it. This is the nature of Gemini. When people say, well, I understand it, I just can't explain it, then you know what? They don't understand it. Because the thing they understand, they can explain. Everybody can explain something that they've actually examined and they've tried and they've tested and they've put into practice, which is something that they've lived authentically. And this is what Gemini is about. Gemini, as ruled by Mercury, is about experience, life experience, and trying things and testing them and not taking yes for an answer or no for an answer. It's where we find out for ourselves. And you can tell me that it's the devil's work, but I don't know it's the devil's work until I've looked into it myself. And this is Gemini. It goes into all of those areas of our psyche and of our consciousness and of our mind to find out for ourselves if those belief systems are actually true or not. And so it creates this balancing point between the hope and the optimism of Sagittarius, which we all want to believe. We all want to believe. But our belief is going to not actually compel us towards spirituality unless it's understood through our own paradigm of intelligence, our own understanding, where we've tested it ourselves and we can explain it, understand it, and where we have the courage to say, you know what, that's a lot of crap. And that also includes testing our teachers, challenging our teachings, and making them answer to us. And again, this is something that is often looked at as, well, you're supposed to trust your guru, you shouldn't ask questions. No credible teacher would ever tell you that. They might say it, but if your teachers can't answer your questions, then they're not your teacher. And only a false guru would say that. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't, once you understand teachings and the teacher explains the thing to you, then there's a point where you have to implement the teachings and actually try the things, put them into practice. This is where Gemini can spin out when everything becomes just a bunch of ideas and it's not geared toward practice. So if any spiritual path, like let's say yoga and Hinduism and this whole culture like that I'm involved in with the Vedic teachings, but you could use any of them, Buddhism or even Christianity, there are practices in that. If it's just about dogma, if it's just about religion and faith, which is what Sagittarius is about and what Jupiter is about the abstract nature of the mind where we feel hopeful and we sense the big picture. If it just remains on that level, then it's just an abstraction and it can lead to this kind of spiritual bypassing where instead of actually getting down and implementing the thing, we just kind of rise above it all the time. It's not until we actually challenge those teachings and put those things into practice by trying the actual teachings themselves that it starts to work. So, you wouldn't just want to shoot holes in the theories with Gemini. You want to also implement and put things into practice. This is what Gemini is about. It's about developing our skills as well. So this full moon in Gemini is about providing that contrast that clarifies your teachings and allows you to give voice to them and actually communicate the things that are meaningful to you in a way that is beneficial to all. Gemini is like the spokesman. Gemini is a great spokesman. That's why Gemini in general can be great teachers because they can articulate the concepts really well, whereas others might get stuck in the concepts. But it's only when Gemini is articulating a high concept that you really get the most out of that sign. So this full moon in Gemini brings that to pass, and we still have this Jupiter-Mars aspect. We still have Jupiter aspecting the Sun. We have exalted Saturn. We also have Venus in Capricorn. So there's a lot of really powerful energy now that's still compelling us higher toward this greater, this greater culmination of energy. One of the other really important things now is Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, is getting this aspect from Jupiter and this aspect from Saturn. So it's also an excellent time on this full moon to really bring the power of Jupiter and Saturn, which is the power of hope and the power of concentration and effort, toward our teachings and toward this desire to figure things out intellectually. And if you remember, this is almost exactly where the Sun was when we had the new moon 14 days ago, when the Sun was at about 10 degrees. So really brings these things together, where we're going to test our concepts and our philosophies through the sort of crucible of the intellect, where we can then explain our concepts and really understand them intellectually. And now for my gold members, I'll talk about each of the 12 signs and the full moon in Gemini.